Okay, just starting. I'm gonna see if this is working. Let's set this up. Okay, and I am just gonna check if you guys can see me. Please let me know. I cannot see the screen, so that would be interesting. I think there may be some people already connected. So can you hear me, see me all okay? If you can, if somebody could just leave me a message, that would be great, because I can't currently see anything. So if you could just let me know. Hey Anne, oh my goodness, it's work on the first go. Awesome. Thank you so much for letting me know. I know we have about 5 minutes until we get started, so let me just finish in adjusting a couple of things. Oh great, oh hey Asrith, welcome Grace, how are you doing Fran, welcome Satyam, so lovely to see you guys. So happy that we are all here. So I'm just gonna check that everything is working all okay, which seems to be. Thank you so much for being here, guys. I'm just gonna, I think we have about a couple of minutes until we get started properly. So, you know, I'm just gonna give it a few seconds. Been a while since oh yes, well yeah, it would have been in January, I suspect. I'm just keeping an eye out because you can probably hear it. There is a fair amount of wind. In order to have a beautiful day like what we have today in Santander, there has to be some wind. You know, we have to compromise. Unfortunately, it's not a perfect situation, but hey, the temperature is very good. We have no clouds in the sky perfectly, so it's nice, and I think you're gonna enjoy the walk today. I mean, it's a walk that in some way or another we've probably done in previous platforms, but you know, should be good. Hi Lilliput, how are you doing? And well, I suspect that the temperature is probably higher for you as Rith. We are at about, well, we were at 20 degrees at 3 p.m. It's 5 p.m. now and the wind has come down. So I reckon the real feel is probably more like 18. But as you can see, I'm just wearing like a long sleeve t-shirt and a light jacket. So, you know, we're not freezing here at all. It's not that way. It's pretty good, but it's so sunny I can't actually see properly without the sunglasses. So it's one of those situations. And yeah, well, like I said, we're just gonna give it a few moments to get started properly, and I'm just gonna make sure that the camera is all centered and working okay. I've just introduced a few new settings and I'm kind of getting used to them, so you know, let us know how it goes. And there is something going on. I don't know. My mom, who is with me, but you know, she's camera shy, so she will not be joining the stream. She just told me that there was something going on there. We saw some guys with like some scuba gear, but like for emergency services, and we thought that there had been some kind of tragedy. And I was like, ah, no tragedy. But no, they are actually just doing some tests. So. Nothing more with happening here today. Hey Ronnie, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing? And yes, happy Pi Day, of course. It's great. I'm a little slow because we just came out from lunch. We went to a sushi bar to have a buffet. But anyway, I think it's time to get started properly. So let's get moving. So hello everybody, welcome today to our tour here in Santander. Hope you're all having a really lovely time. In case you don't know me, my name is Dr. Lilian Céspedes González. No, I do have a PhD in history from the University of Winchester in the UK, and I'm a tour guide here in the UK today. Not here because we are in Spain, we're in Santander, in my hometown. And I didn't really know exactly where we were going to do the tour, weather dependent. The weather, as you see, is lovely. We're at about 18 degrees, something like that right now. Very few clouds up in the sky, and it's a lovely day to be walking around. We're going to encounter some windy conditions though, so please do be mindful. As you can see, I have a brand new microphone and it has all the wind covers in there, but you know, technology has only so much that it can provide in that regards. And well, that's it. We're gonna be walking for a while. Please do make sure that you ask any questions or whatever that you may have on our YouTube comments. I'll be looking at them. And on the YouTube, on the pin section, you have the way that you can support all of our streams and tours through our Buy Me a Coffee, which is in Travolution, and you also have our PayPal, which is paypal.me/Travolution Tours. And that's it. I'm gonna turn the camera, and then we're gonna roll. So let me just. Oops, that's not the right one. Why isn't it turning? Oh, it's because I clicked the other one around. Okay, excellent. So here we are. We are right on the edge of the Maritime Walk here in Santander. And well, actually, let me show you the test rescue mission that they're doing right out here. We're in the Bay of Santander, which is considered one of the most beautiful bays in the world. There is somebody actually underwater currently, and they're just carrying out this rescue mission. So that's why there is a bit of a commotion in here, but nothing morbid in that regards. And well, we're in this area that is actually relatively new. And I say relatively, this area was perhaps built about a decade ago or so for one of the sailing tournaments. Santander, as you can see, being a port town, we have a huge sailing tradition, and in fact, we are just on the stomping grounds of the Royal Sailing School, which has a huge reputation. They participate in the Olympics and a few others, and a lot of our most famous sailors actually train just over here. And well, this is an area that takes us over to the beach and a few of the most touristic destinations in Santander. And in front of us is a very important cultural institution for us, which is this building with, unfortunately, the crane in there. We have several cranes around the city this time of the year because we are getting ready for the tourists. But this is el Palacio de Festivales, the festival hall, which is essentially our theater. It's a very important theater. It's been hosting a very important festival during the summer months, the FIS, el Festival Internacional de Santander, the International Festival of Santander, which actually brings a lot of big names for the sake of celebrating classical music, opera, and ballet. And that happens all during the summer. It started in the late 19th century over to the turn of the 20th century, and it's one of the most important in Spain. So, as you see, we have a big reputation for that kind of stuff in the area. And here we have, well, the remnants of the past here in Santander, which is this ditch that you see right here on the left. This is El Dique de Gamazo's ditch, which is quite indicative of what probably you can think happening here. This was the area where many of our ships were actually fixed up until the 19th century, where the shipyard of Santander was taken once again to the back end of the port in the bay, because, well, as you can see, today is not a really bad day at all. We do have quite a lot of wind, and it's just easier and safer for the ships to have better cover in the inside of the bay. But, well, this has been emptied for quite some time, and it's just been used mostly to preserve the tradition of all of our shipbuilding and ship repairs that we've been doing here since time immemorial. And I say time immemorial because there's always been a community of people in the area of Santander since prehistoric times. We don't know exactly where that prehistoric community was located, but we do know that in Roman times we were already an important port called Portus Victoriae, the port of victory. And as a result, well, we know that our shipping industry, ship making in general, anything that has to do with the ocean is important and has always been important for the prosperity. But, well, at least we have it. And I say at least we have it because the history of Santander is a history very much, afflicted by a lot of misery. We've had all sorts of things happening here from the time of the Civil War, the fire that happens roughly at the same time during Franco's regime. We have had ups and downs, and a lot of our inheritance, well, unfortunately, has gone missing. Well, we're going to be walking away from this area so we can carry on along the coastline of the city. We're going to be engaging with the bay and with a few of the monuments that we have over on that side. And well, I'm just going to give you the last few views over here before we go. like I said, in certain parts of the bay we may encounter a bit more wind. Hopefully it will not interfere, but I can see the chat, so if there are any problems with the wind, please let me know. So far it doesn't seem to be affecting the vibrate too much. The good thing about streaming through Prism is that it tells me roughly how that affects things, and so far so good. So anyway, let's get walking and let's start talking more about Santander. And for those of you who are just coming into the stream, welcome here. I hope you're all doing very, very good, and it's lovely to be showing you around. Well, in front of us we have one of the many university buildings in the city. This is part of the UC, the University of Cantabria, and it's one of the buildings that is dedicated to the study of nautica. And nautica is quite literally anything that has to do with the ocean, with the seas. I'm sure you can appreciate we have a long maritime tradition in this town, and we've always been home to great naval in here. The campus here in the university is a bit split all over the city. This one is here, of course, due to our proximity to the port, but then we have buildings all over the town. So it's not a condensed sort of campus like many people expect it to be. It's all spread around. And well, the university buildings are not particularly pretty. I'm not gonna pretend that we have a beautiful university, because we don't. But you know, it's important. Santander is a relatively small town in terms of the size it has within the rest of Spain. We are a population of about 220,000, 250,000, depending how you count the metropolitan area. And well, the fact that we even have a university that is recognized for certain things is really important for us. Now, as you can see, it's a beautiful day, very clear skies. We have a lot of reflection here in the water, so we're gonna get us to a spot where we can take some nice views. But we are here in the area of Castelar. You see all of these very tall buildings. Well, some of them are more recent than others, but this is the area of what we call el ensanche de Santander. What does that mean? Ensanchar in Spanish means something that becomes larger, something that becomes wider, and that is what happens here mostly in the late 18th, early 19th century, in an attempt of, well, pushing the boundaries of what was up until that moment in time the medieval town. Santander really starts only accumulating money in modern times as a port of Castile, and it will not be until the period when coming sea bathing becomes really popular with the nobility and particularly the royal family that a lot of people with money start coming to our city. Up until that moment in time we were relatively humble because the majority of our businesses are dedicated to, of course, the port and the water. As I'm sure you realize, a lot of the communities that live just by the sea tend to be quite humble. Well, the area of Castelar will become that first place where mansions start appearing. Now, I know to you this may not look like mansions, perhaps like the way you imagine them, but in Spain we've always had a tradition of building flats, of building upwards rather than necessarily building houses as you expect in some countries like the United States or the UK. Hey Laurie, thank you so much for joining us. Hope you're doing good. So a lot of these buildings would have had and still have huge flats that became the mansions of those wealthy people. The majority of those wealthy people came from the area of Madrid and the interior of Castile, as well as the south of Spain, because, well, you may be aware of the fact that in Andalusia it can be quite hot certain times of the year, while here in Santander you get to experience the beautiful beach with a little bit of a breeze, a little bit of rain, and that's the reason why even people from the south comes here in the summer and already came here back then to escape the heat and be able to enjoy the views that you see here today. I am pointing now to all of these little boats that we have in here, which is the area of Puerto Chico. But I'll tell you more about Puerto Chico, which literally means the little port, when we are facing from the front, from the best viewpoint, because, well, this is actually part of my neighborhood. This is where my family came from. Not the wealthy part, but the more humble part of the city. Well, this area of Santander, as you can see, is not just the lovely buildings going up, most of which have been very heavily restored in recent years to and look, we have these very wide avenues which are specifically designed for walking. And I know that may sound perhaps a bit strange if you are not used to it, but here in this town we love walking. And part of that is because we are very privileged to have the bay in one side, and on the other side of the city we have the open sea over to the area of El Sardinero. In fact, already on YouTube we have a rather rainy but still pleasant tour of El Sardinero that we did a few months ago, and you can watch at any point. So we like being able to enjoy our landscape, our nature, and our town. In fact, in the rest of Spain, we have a bit of a reputation of being a little posers here in Santander. Apparently, we are people who like to, you know, pretend that they are a certain way, and that probably comes from time and the fact that back in the day we were a very important maritime town. It's just, well, misfortune happened to us, particularly from the 17th to the early 20th century, and we lost a lot of our reputation. As you see, the history of Santander goes more or less in line with the history of Spain, the rise and fall of our empire, and what have you not. And pink waving. Hi, Ronnie. Well, I'm just gonna stop here on the side so I can give you a proper view of Puerto Chico, and I can tell you what this area was actually well known for. But here, after the more modern building, which I don't know if you can see, but this is what we call the modern boating style because of those very round edges, unfortunately all painted gray, which I don't think is a great color for that perspective, but well, it's supposed to blend in with the original architecture. We have some traditional buildings right on the other side of the city. The locals have said hi to you, which are now some of the premises for our local government, but these were the typical mansion apartments of the late 19th over to 20th century, and these are still original, very heavily restored with those massive balconies, but this is the original architecture. And here is where we have Puerto Chico. So Puerto Chico quite literally means the little port, and this is what Santander has always been about. We've just been a fishing community and a sailing community. The little port was originally where the vast majority of our sailors used to dock with smaller embarkations, and over time it's just been part of the general docking area that has just been stretched along the whole of the bay. The big ships don't obviously come here. This is purely for, you know, either small embarkations for work or pleasure boats, as you see in there. And well, this is generally what the essence of the city is. We live for the sea. If you are from Santander and you don't enjoy the sea life, well, better go to Castile and enjoy the Central Plains, because this is what the entirety community has always been striving for. The majority of people that used to own boats in here before our time of glory were very, very humble. So Puerto Chico was normally associated with the poor communities of Santander. In fact, well, part of my family came from this neighborhood. And in that sense, the city is quite stratified. You don't necessarily mix one class with the other. Well, I'm gonna give you a better view of Puerto Chico now here in a moment, but this whole area was essentially where the fish market was in. And in fact, further along, it is currently being renovated, so we will not go down that way. Any fish seller, la sardinera, which literally means the sardine seller, because that's the kind of catch that we get here in Cantabria. We get a lot of sardinas, bocartes, arenques, so sardines, whitebait, a lot of, you know, good fishes for grilling, herring, that kind of stuff. That's what we used to make money for. And if any of you know anything about fishes, there aren't particularly a lot of money to be made from those kind of catches. So we were a very humble neighborhood, but very necessary for the development of the community. And here we have a massive Spanish flag, which is not customary, by the way, in every single Spanish town. It's just something very STV, Santander toda la vida, Santander for life, because, well, due to our most recent history, the city of Santander has always identified as a conservative town. And when I mean conservative, I don't just mean conservative in its way of life, as you can see, its political and social agenda. Santander was the first town in Spain where we actually developed a concentration camp during the Civil War, and despite for a really long time we had support towards the Republican government at the beginning of the Civil War, well, after that there was a very heavy, I guess, turn towards the side of the dictatorship and of Franco, and that is something that is still affected a lot of the community dynamics. So again, everything that has to do with nationalism and that sort of romanticized view of the past is something that unfortunately still resonates with our city. The local government has always been a right-wing government for the longest time. It's difficult for dynamics like that to change here because, well, the majority of the population in Santander is a growing, aging population. They are in some ways stuck in their ways, and many of them lived and were even born during the time of Franco. So we do say that Santander is one of those places where you see a lot of generational issues, and in fact young people in Santander in recent years have tried to reclaim their heritage, and they're actually the main drivers to improve our community, but it's traditionally been a struggle. And well, I'm glad that you find it beautiful, Natalie. This is the area where I used to come every single Sunday. We would come here to have a walk around, we would hang out with friends and whatnot. So, you know, this is the landscape that I grew up with, quite literally on my doorstep. But well, it's also a landscape that is, you know, reflective of some very specific social issues in some cases. I'm just gonna stop here at the front properly without the actual banister, so we can look at it from the front. There you go. So here you have the very edge of Puerto Chico all the way down to Castelar and where we've come from. Well, we're now gonna be walking around on the edge of the bay, so you can see the beautiful side of the mountains, because, you know, as much as Santander is a city that is entirely built around the water, Cantabria, which is the region where we're at, has another side to it, which is mountains. In fact, if we were in a different part of the city, and some of you have done it with me before, we would have had to go on very steep hills to just be moving around. Today we're on the flat, and that's just as well, because, well, with the wind it would be quite challenging moving around there. I'm glad that you're enjoying it, Natalie. I think it's a very nice place, but, well, like I said, it's got its ups and downs just like everybody. Well, we're now going to engage properly with the open view of the Bay of Santander. The Bay of Santander, by the way, is considered to be one of the most beautiful bays in the whole world, and that's not something that I say because I'm from here. It is something that is actively registered by a club, an association that looks after, you know, heritage landscapes and ecological areas, and as such, the Bay of Santander, given specific circumstances, has been given that categorization alongside with other places around the world, including Biarritz and San Francisco. So, you know, I promise you that the name is given rightfully so, and you will see it right there. Well, as we are approaching, you see that right on the other side of the bay, the mountains are in full view. I'm gonna see if I can maybe put in the zoom. Oh, I'm actually already on the maximum zoom in there, but you can see that there is like a little white on top of the mountains. That's not because there are clouds. Well, there is a big cloud that's coming through the background, but the majority of that sort of white area is actually snow. A lot of people don't know that, but the mountains here in Cantabria are pretty tall. We have what we call La Cordillera Cantábrica, the Cantabrian mountain chain, which is essentially the spin-off of the Pyrenees, and as a result, our highest mountains go over to 2,000 meters above the sea level. Now, the area that you're seeing just across the bay is maybe, if you catch the little ferry boat, it's about 15 minutes to cross. If you need to drive, it's no more than about an hour or so, less than. So as you can see, you can be enjoying the beautiful beaches and seaside of Santander in one moment, and catch the car and be by the mountains trekking even doing skiing within a matter of 40 minutes, which is very privileged. And in fact, for a very long time, in tourism advertisement and just generally trying to promote the good name of Cantabria and Santander, we used to say that, well, Cantabria was el paraíso, paradise, because here you get everything that you could ask for, alongside very nice food, because we nice surf and turf everywhere. Now, the building that we have right in front of us, by the way, is a very controversial building for us. It's what we call el Club Marítimo, the Maritime Club. As you can see, it's not very heavily, I guess, inhabited by people right now, because this is a private club. And this is part of that legacy of, wealth and riches that I was mentioning. The wealthy people of Castelar often had their own private shops, etc., and they came to this club as part of their elite society. Even in this day and age, you cannot just go in there because you want to. You need to go either by invitation, membership, etc. And it is one of the most coveted terraces in the city, because as you can see, they are right on the water, and having a coffee where the people that you're probably seeing through the window right there is, well, absolutely wonderful and gorgeous. But again, it's just remnants of a time that it's no longer representative of Santander. And I say no longer representative of Santander because, well, things are changing. We are developing, new ways of enjoying our city, new ways of enjoying the region of Cantabria, but we still have some deficits that we're trying to, well, consider. Now, before I tell you a bit more about that, let me stop here right in front of the monument. I don't know if we're going to be able to see it right because of the sun. I'm going to have to angle it right here. There we go. Can you see that the different laminated metal creates the face of somebody, right? Well, this is our dear Mr. Hierro. And he was a poet. He was a poet that, amongst many things, actually Jose Hierro wrote many different types of poetry about our hometown and about the beauty of our landscapes that you can see right next to him, the rich heritage and culture of this general part of the country, and was a huge advocate for the regionalism of Cantabria during the 19th century. And what is that regionalism of Cantabria? Well, let me explain as we continue walking on Paseo Marítimo, on the Maritime Walk, and as you keep on getting nicer views of the bay. Well, as you may know, Spain has always had a complicated history of unity. We even have that problem nowadays. I'm sure that you are aware that we have several independentist regions, such as, for example, Catalonia, Galicia, País Vasco, the Basque Country, where, by the way, we're going to be on the 24th visiting the town of Bilbao. And, well, this is something that comes from the fact that we were never a unified country until the golden age of Spain. The general idea that all of the parts of Spain should get along is difficult because we have very different cultures, and the culture of Cantabria is quite specific. But before I tell you more, I want to tell you about this local phenomenon, which is this other sculpture that we have here by José Cobo. This sculpture is, by the way, from the late 80s, early 90s, if I remember correctly. And they are called Los Raqueros, which, as you can see, there is 4 different boys standing on different ages of the bay. I'm glad that you enjoy that sculpture, Fran. I think it's very nice. I just wish it was somewhere where the weather could potentially, not damage it so much. But anyway, so as you can see, this is the area of Los Raqueros. Lots of people taking pictures. One of our fishermen doing their job here. And this is actually a social commentary of something that used to happen in Santander, even when my granddad was a kid, a young man. For the record, my granddad is in his 70s, so I'm not talking of, many hundreds of years ago. I'm talking of 50 years ago. From this area that you see here, which has changed the same, these kids, these young lads from the area of Puerto Chico, from the humble part of the community, used to come to the edge and they will ask people for money to do tricks in the water or to go catch them. So the idea was that you will drop a penny or whatever, they will try to catch it by doing some kind of pirouette on the sky, and it was entertainment. It was a way of making easy coin for kids that otherwise probably wouldn't have a livelihood. Well, they are called Los Raqueros because by being so humble and so poor, supposedly they had rude behavior, all right? This is, I guess, in some ways no different than certain I guess, Cockney culture, I guess, ideology, perhaps in London, a little bit of chicken tongue, a little bit ruffle and tumble, not necessarily with malicious intents, but cheeky, and in many ways embracing the idea of Spanish picaresque, of the little street urchin or, lovable rogues that will do whatever they need to get by. Well, it is, even in this day and age in Santander, an insult to call somebody a raquero. And normally you say that of somebody who speaks loudly and they're always using bad language. If you say somebody speaks like a sailor, here in Santander you don't say that. You say, oh, vaya raquero que eres, meaning, oh, you're such a raquero. And you say it like that, with absolute disdain and horribleness in your voice. Oh, no worries, Polly. Thank you so much for joining us. So as you see, even our local artists take inspiration from times gone by to create our modern day sculptures. Well, this takes me back to what I was saying about Cantabrian culture, Santander, etc., and why was the need of highlighting it in comparison to the rest of Spain. Well, Cantabria is very different from the rest of Spain, and that is because we are in a very privileged geographical situation. And well, I say privileged because you can see the very gifts natures give us, but it's not necessarily so privileged in terms of communication with the rest of the country. We're completely surrounded by water and very tall mountains, not very easy to make, an easy living with us. And in the meantime, let me show you as well the other buildings here on the other side of Paseo Pereda, which have been restored very recently and actually look very beautiful with the light today. Hi, Helen, how are you doing? Thank you so much for joining us here. Well, because Cantabria has always been isolated, we've always been subjugated to Castile, and we were always sort of left to our own devices because nobody cared about us. Even in this day and age, Cantabria will only appear in national news if it's been raining terribly, because apparently it's the only thing we know how to do, rain proper, or if there has been some kind of major accident. Otherwise, we've always been like, the cousin everybody forgets about. We're a small region, we've always had very humble communities. If it's not our port, it is our agricultural communities, which, given our mountains, can only really survive of very few sheep, mostly goats, and a few cows. In fact, we have some very specific mountain cow breeds in here that allows us certain livelihood and respect within agricultural communities due to our milk and our beef. But it's a hard life. It's very humble and very hard. So who has time for Cantabria? Well, nobody. Until in recent years, thanks to a little thing called climate change, which I'm sure you're all very familiar with, things have started changing because, as you can see, look at these landscapes, look at this beautiful day and weather. We're in the middle of March 20. Even the day before was 17 degrees, and you couldn't ask for more. So this has created a huge incentive for tourism, national tourism, particularly people coming from Madrid, because they're landlocked and this is quite easy for them. There is a direct flight from Madrid to Santander. It takes literally 50 minutes by plane, and you can do it for as little as £15 return with Ryanair, which is it's nothing. If you drive or if you take the bus, it's a 4-hour journey. It's not terrible. You can come for the weekend. You can even come and go in a day if you really wanted to. So this has promoted this enhanced sense of tourism. Nowadays, we're trying to exploit this tourism for our gain, but at the same time, we have to be very careful of how many people we let in and, how otherwise, because we are concerned that our beauty, the out of the beaten path hidden gem, may be spoiled by mass tourism. And that's something we're encountering challenges with. But here we have not even an age bygone. As you see, this is very much still in use. These are las pedreñeras. These are the little ferries that take you to the area across from the water. In fact, if I turn around just very quickly, you will see that suddenly there is that village just in front of us. That is the area of what we call Pedreña and Somo. Pedreña and Somo are very well known because they are areas for golfing and surfing, two huge sports that bring a lot of people to Cantabria every single year. But there are small fishing villages otherwise. A majority of people come to Santander where they can stay in our, hotels and touristic accommodations, and then they take the little boat across. And I think it's about to go, by the way, so we will see it on the move. Now, This is also, of course, used by the locals because, well, people need to come and go one way or another across the bay, and because the bay is very long, if you don't take the ferry, you can, like I said, you need to take the car and sort of turn around. I think I'm just gonna see if they come out, because I thought they were about to come out, and they've just taken the ropes out of the boat, so you can see the little thing in motion. But it's not a very glamorous ferry, by the way. This is quite literally as rough as it gets. In fact, I don't know if you can see, the water is a little bit spiky because, like I said, in order for us to have good weather in this town, we really need the wind. And when we see the water this choppy, I promise you that the ride on the ferry can be a bit of a shock to the system if you are not used to them. A lot of people try to compare it to the passing of the ferry from Portsmouth or Southampton to the Isle of Wight. No way, that's a luxury. Going in this little thing, which have been the exact same thing since my parents were little in the 70s, is no luxury at all. It moves quite a fair bit. So there you go, seeing it, and well, as you can see, we've even gathered a crowd because everybody wants to come and see the very famous Pedreñeras doing the little journey. In this day and age, we even have one that mostly runs in the summer, which is solar powered, and that is mostly used for commercial and touristic purposes rather than just done for the general commute. But as you can see, since this is a bit of a gathering area, we have a terrace. This is a place where a lot of people come to meet together, and well, it just, you know, it's a meeting point for the community and another attractive touristic destination that we're trying to promote in this day and age. Well, we are now approaching the area of El Centro Botín, and well, I wasn't sure if we were gonna get up there or not. Depending on the wind, it can be a bit nasty. I'm gonna try it, but as you see, we're experiencing a lot of different, well, renovations around here. I'm gonna keep an eye on the signal. It should be fine, but this is what they're trying to fix now. This is El Embarcadero. This was the original Port Authority of Santander. It's a beautiful building from the 19th century, which unfortunately, by the very virtue of being at the edge of the sea, has, well, been very severely damaged by our weather. When I say severely damaged by our weather, I mean that in here, when the weather gets nasty, we get 2 to 5 meter waves right where I'm walking, by the way. I don't have to go any farther than that to actually get that kind of height from the water up. Well, the reason why I'm coming here on the shade is because since I cannot show you the Embarcadero properly, I would like to show you a little monument that is here tucked away between the trees. We also catch a little bit of shade because after having been out there for nearly 40 minutes in the sun, I must admit I'm a little bit warm. And in fact, if I remember correctly, we may have just had a commemoration, and there may even be a commemorative wreath next to our monument here, which goes to highlight the huge impact that the community of Santander has had to the maritime tradition of all of Spanish history for a really long time. And here you go. So you must see a little cannon coming through and a wreath, and then I'll explain what you see here. So let me read what it says in Spanish and I'll translate it for you. So this says, Santander y Cantabria a la Armada Española. Santander and Cantabria to the Spanish Armada, marinos ilustres montañeses. Important people from the sailing community, montañeses. Montañes comes from the word mountain, and mountain is normally how we call colloquially to this part of the country. As you see, there has been a wreath here because we've had some very important commemorations. And in fact, I am going to highlight some numbers and some names here on the wall because they are the 13th and 14th century, and some names that you see here like Ramón Bonifaz y Camargo, for example, Pedro López de Mendoza, and over here, of course, Gutiérrez de Escalante. A lot of these names, including Juan de la Cosa, who is the first one there, were super important mariners of the later Middle Ages and then on the time of the Catholic monarchs of Spain. These names were people who were born in this town, who gained a very good job in the Navy, and that actually helped doing super important things such as the liberation of Seville during the time that it was occupied by Muslim forces. There was a huge fleet that was sent from here, from Santander down to Seville under order of the Castilian king to try to reconquer that area from the area of Al-Andalus. Juan de la Cosa is going to be instrumental as a cartographer and as somebody who will really help develop the age of discovery on behalf of Spain. Without the maps and general work that he did at sea, we probably wouldn't have been able to put Spain at such high standard in overall history. And I could go on. I mean, as you can see, they go all the way up to the 19th century. But just so you can understand that this has actually been a very important community for what we've always done well, which is, well, warfare at sea and any kind of navigation. Well, now that you've seen this and have perhaps understood a bit more about our history and maybe connected the dots with a few other bits and pieces, I'm just gonna take us here to the Centro Botín, which is the building that you see in front of us. From this angle, it doesn't look the nicest, but this is one of the most recent designs of Renzo Piano, which you guys have now, you should be super knowledgeable in Renzo Piano thanks to me, because we've seen the Shard in London, we've seen the Parliament in Valletta, and many more. But before I do that, we're just gonna pay homage to an old friend, which is La Grúa de Piedra, the stone crane, as we call it here, which is part of the industrial legacy of the port of Santander. This crane has been here since the 19th century, has received many, many restorations, and the crane, of course, is here because the ships back in the day used to dock in here, and this is where we used to move the cargo back and forth. As you see, they are revitalizing this part of the city because, well, you may have gathered a lot of the terrain, in fact, not a lot. All of the walk we've done today is the terrain reclaimed to the sea. If we were in the original Santander of the Middle Ages, we would have to walk another 20 minutes to actually be on solid ground. So, well, part of our issues currently is that the weather is very favorable because the temperatures have gone up, but also in the winter we can get really, really bad, well, sea damage into our general coastline, and that's what's causing some of the adjustments. So we're just gonna go here for a second. I'm just trying to readjust the gimbal to the sunlight because, you know, sometimes the camera goes a bit funny. And over here as well, by the way, this lovely park are Los Jardines de Pereda Gardens. In fact, I would go and show you the monument in just one second because I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna get up to the viewing platform on the Centro Botín, unless you guys don't want to see it, but I would like to take you up there because I think the views today would be quite beautiful. And there is also a very funny elevator, which I think may be interesting to experience. But as you see, this is a very important part of the city for us. You have the full view of the bay, and here we have several cultural institutions. The Centro Botín is actually financed by one of the wealthiest families in the city, which is the Botín family, and in case you don't know them, you will probably know the name of Santander due to a bank. Well, they are the people that own and founded that bank, so you understand the kind of money they have. This was part of the revitalization of the Bay of Santander that was done about just over a decade ago now, and it's supposed to be a brand new area for, well, attracting tourism. As you see, it's a very interesting construction. They use glass and metal, which right where we are can cause some problems. Locals hate it. We'll be more than happy to hear what you guys think about it because it is very polarizing. And well, we're just gonna get to the top in here. Let's hope that the elevator is working because, well, I don't mind going up the stairs, but the elevator would make things a lot easier for us. And well, if the elevator is working, just so you know, it is a musical elevator and it will talk to us. So let me just catch it there. And you also get to see the panoramic views here from the elevator itself. We should be going up any moment now. There we go. And if you're hearing voices, you're not making it up. It is talking to us. Just keeps on saying the word yes in Spanish. And it becomes intense. Well, that is the talking elevator. I'm just gonna... So we just encountered a school. The kids were just preparing some homework and they were making fun of the elevator. I think you probably heard what all the fuss was about. And well, here we are, and one of the best views of the whole town. So as you can see, the elevation in Santander goes up and up and up the hill. And well, you can see some other important monuments from here. So if we pass the first line of interaction with the gardens, you see that spinnaker right in front of us, that spire. That's the spire of the Jesuits church, which is actually my neighborhood, literally. If you see the yellow facade next to it, 2 rows back, that's where my parents live. So that's where I actually went to school. And all the way here, we have the new building by the Botín family that is just being renovated. They're gonna make that into a new art gallery, hopefully opening anytime soon. And that being the case, of course, we will be visiting very shortly. And in front of us is the huge walkway that we've just done today from where the festival palace is there at the back end. You can recognize it from the crane all the way to here. Yeah, the elevator is an experience. Like I said, this whole area of construction was actually quite controversial, because I don't know if you guys can see, there is actually a metallic mesh right above the actual ceiling, and that's because, well, I'm sure you can see some tiny rondelles that cover the whole building. The idea behind these rondelles were that they were done of a special ceramic that on a beautiful day like today reflects the light from the sky and how the light hits the water, and it's supposed to make the whole experience even more beautiful. Well, unfortunately, with the wind that you have also experienced today, without the metallic mesh, these things were falling on people's heads, and it made the experience a lot less enjoyable. So, you know, visitors and locals have diverging opinions about the success of the center Botín overall. I think, though, that the views do make it worthwhile. You're welcome to not agree with me, but you know, this is a view that I can quite happily watch for hours. And it is a view that doesn't disappoint. On a foggy day, this has some very romantic vibes. On a very nasty day, when the weather is, you know, quite choppy, you get here and you get to see how all of those waves jump all the way up to those 2 to 5 meters that I was mentioning all around that coast. From here, you can see in the winter the mountains across the water entirely covered in snow. It is a view that has attracted lots of people over time, and you know, one of the people that actually decided to move to the city of Santander because of these views and the sea was actually a British queen that not many people remember, but it was one of the descendants of Queen Victoria. Her name is, of course, Victoria Eugenia, who got married to the Spanish king Alfonso XIII, better known by the vast majority of people for being the very first king to install a dictatorship here in Spain. Well, Victoria Eugenia was apparently very enamored with the Cantabrian coastline. Apparently it reminded her of home to some extent, and I can see why. Those of you who are familiar with the UK, I'm sure you notice some similarities, and why I'm so well adjusted to the British weather. And that's the reason why a lot of the city that you see here was actually built in some ways in an English manner. We do have some elements of British architecture that we as Spanish people don't want to accept, of course, because that would be some kind of, you know, big thing to say about our identity. But that's why a lot of this area of Castelar and now Paseo de Pereda has become so popular and so well. No worries, guys. I'm so glad that you've enjoyed it. Well, we're gonna take the elevator back down, then I'll take you to the statue of Pereda, and after that we probably will wrap up the hour in that sense, talking elevators and things. It is a very interesting place. I know, but you know, these are some of the things that the city of Santander sometimes has these problems. We have really good ideas, like ideas that on paper are like, oh my god, yeah, that sounds like a great idea, but then in terms of execution, I think we get taken in a bit by the idea rather than the practicalities. So we're gonna go down on the elevator, and the elevator is gonna talk to us once again, but it's gonna say the opposite now. And here we go. now she's saying no. International word, you don't need a translation for that. just gonna let the elevator open and for some people to get out, and then we're coming out ourselves. All right, so there you go. That is our talking elevator. Rate it on TripAdvisor, whichever way you want it to be. If you're in favor, explain why. If you don't like it, likewise. Well, this area where we're now is actually a very important and special area for me, guys, because the Jardines de Pereda is the place where I used to play as a kid. I'm talking, you know, proper tiny Lily running around like a headless chicken here. And it's actually very different from what I remember it, not because my memory is failing, but because this area has changed a lot. When I was a little girl, this was mostly an entirely green area with a lot of trees and a few areas of recreation for kids. Nowadays, it's become more an area for parading and with some modern art installations. And well, what kind of modern art installations am I talking about? This. This is supposed to be some kind of metaphor to the life of Cantabria and Santander, with the sea bed and the mountains and the water that comes and goes. It's part of a circuit of 3 fountains, and the water circulates differently between the 3 of them. I don't know what you guys think of the installation. You know, it's entirely up to you again to decide whether this is good or bad. But well, this is the kind of thing that institutions like El Centro Botín, which from here you can see the full shape of the building, which actually is not an ugly building in that regards, have brought to this area, and the reason why a lot of it has been redeveloped. Kind of person, which of course is not me as a 10-year-old, but the kind of person that leaves money in the city, because this city needs, you know, customers essentially. Like I was mentioning, in Santander we mostly have an aging population. The majority of our industry is a service industry dedicated to, well, hospitality, you know, food, etc., etc. And Santander is a very good place to go out for food and a drink and to stay for a couple of nights. But you know, you cannot build an entire city just based on that. So that's the reason why we're looking to diversify, and why places like the Centro Botín that we've just seen and the building also owned by the Botín family in front of us are trying to advocate for culture, particularly for modern art. Not just modern art, but modern art specifically. We do have big names in modern art in Spain, some even from Cantabria, but overall we do have some very important art collectors in this follow the model that some other Spanish cities have already done very successfully. And well, you know, we're just trying to replicate what has worked somewhere else. Whether it will work for us or not, different story. But if Malaga could do it, maybe Santander can. I'm glad that you like the talking elevator, Fran. Well, this is the monument to Pereda. Pereda is the name of that man that you see here on top of the mountain, the metaphorical and literal mountain, which is, you know, once again the symbol of Cantabria. And the writing that you see on the actual wall, it says A Pereda la montaña. La montaña, because remember, the mountain is the cultural background of Cantabria. It's our very own name when we talk, you know, generally speaking. Why so? Well, Pereda, like José Hierro that we saw earlier on, is going to be a very important literary figure for our community, for our region, that essentially writes mostly what we call literatura costumbrista. And what is costumbrismo? You're probably wondering. Costumbrismo literally talks about people's customs. You know, he's talking about the everyday life of Santander in this particular case. Well, I am gonna get as close as possible so you can see the different scenes around it. All of the scenes are taken from these stories that Pereda wrote. This is literally just a village priest taking care of the kids who are pulling a fast one on him. As you can see, he's taking his hand to his head, trying to be like, oh my God, these little rascals, what am I gonna do with them? We have some other different things. Over here at the top, you see 2 merchants that are climbing their way up with some horses and some donkeys. That is the life of the countryside. That is what people in Cantabria mostly lived off. And here we see something very, very important and peculiar. I'm gonna get a little bit closer. And I'm sure you can see like a little ship carving there on the wall, and then a lot of people, mostly women, saying goodbye to men. There is a lot of tragic stories that come from communities like Santander, you know. unfortunate reality that there wasn't always a livelihood here and people had to get on a ship and go, it was, very hard for the community, particularly during the golden age of Spain. We know that the north of Spain, not just Cantabria, but other green areas like, for example, Asturias and Galicia, become very prominent for settlers living over to America. Why? Because, well, the hardship of this land they already knew. The hardship of another land was a new adventure. Perhaps they could do better for themselves. This is a typical sort of love story, which is kind of like the I guess mountain rural version of Romeo and Juliet. She's from one town, as you see, we're right in the edge of the mountain. She's from one town, he's from another. There are rivalries between different towns. Here the valleys of Cantabria have their own local cultures, and I'm talking of valleys that are 5 minutes away, and even then they have their own local cultures, their own particular ways of life, and well, them two getting together could potentially create tension. As you see, I'm not suggesting any of these stories are particularly, groundbreaking or whatever, but they are very telling of the kind of things that, our community has always dealt with and where our very roots are. And that's the reason why Pera gets such a prominent spot here in Santander and in Cantabria overall, because he didn't mind talking about ordinary people, which is something that is quite lacking in Spain in the 19th century. For luxury. So we love Pera because he was happy to promote us once again, to showcase why La Montaña, why Cantabria were worthwhile and why we should occupy our rightful place in Spanish history and Spanish culture overall. And this, considering that we have less than 5 minutes left, is where we're gonna be ending the tour. So as you can see, I'll do a quick 360 here on the rest of the gardens. That is the El Tío Vivo, that's the carousel where I spent God knows how many times as a little kid. Used to drive my parents crazy for that. That over on the other side is the duck pond where I used to go and feed the ducks as a little kid, but you cannot feed the ducks here anymore because, well, it's considered not to be the right thing to do and there are no ducks in there for just general, health and safety reasons. And over here, as you see, well, we have one of the main roads of Santander connecting the whole city center, and a little, I think this is a magnolia tree that is just trying to come over in bloom because, well, although we are in winter, winter is not gonna last very long here with this kind of weather that we keep on having. And well, I think that's probably as much as we have time for today. So I'm just gonna front goodbye to you guys. And here, there we go, I done it. Excellent. Hey, how are you guys doing? I can now see you properly because the wind has let the clouds come in a little bit and I don't go blind anymore. But no worries, Helen, it's my pleasure. So I hope that you've been able to enjoy Santander. We hadn't been here for such a long time. So, I'm glad that I was able to do it on such a beautiful day as well, because, well, it could have been a rainy day and that wouldn't have been so fun in that regards. And I hope that has helped you understand a bit more about Spanish culture. And well, if you ever have the chance to come and visit, do it, because again, spending a week in Santander would allow you to see a lot of Spain that perhaps you wouldn't otherwise. And the food, remember that we have really good food in Santander, and if you haven't seen the good food we have in Santander on YouTube already, you have it on replay, 2 different tours of tapas, of traditional Spanish food specifically for Santander that we did a few months ago as well. No worries guys, it's my absolute pleasure. If you are watching us later on, then hi and thank you for watching anyway. And if you are around, I will be seeing you next week. So we can do a live tour just like today of Bilbao, which is about an hour's drive from Santander. And although being by the seaside, is mostly an industrial town, so we're gonna get a lot of contrast. And that is all. If you would like to be so kind of supporting us, in the actual comments for this tour, as well as on the general description, you have the links to our Buy Me a Coffee and our PayPal. And if you ever have any questions, just drop us a message and I'll be more than happy to oblige. Take care of yourselves and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye bye, see you later.